So in this video, I created a presentation that I wanted to share and discuss with you all related to Pokemon Emerald's Battle Frontier. This video is going to be mostly just talking about the Battle Dome. So jumping to the next slide, the whole purpose of this video and I guess presentation I wanted to put together is just kind of go over the last maybe few months or even like year of creating and breeding and training Pokemon and assembling a team specifically for the Battle Frontier. I made a lot of mistakes and I've learned a lot of lessons, and I don't want that to go, or I guess be forgotten about for my sake and for others. I know getting a medal in the Battle Frontier and even like Battle Dome isn't like the most pivotal achievement in human history. However, at the same time, I think it'd be kind of fun just to talk about it and dissect it a little bit further and, turn it into some sort of entertaining content. So yeah, I just want to share a lot of challenges I faced and things that it came up in the Battle Dome specifically that I want other trainers and people to be aware of if they're looking to try and get a gold medal, more specifically again in the Battle Dome. This can be applied to probably the Battle Tower and a little bit in the Battle Factory, but because of how the Battle Dome is set up, it's most applicable to that. I do want to remind people though, I only have one gold medal and it is in the Battle Dome. I do want to note that I've only have the gold medal or a gold medal in the Battle Dome, and I've only gotten that high in the Battle Dome one time. So my experience with the higher rounds is a little bit limited. So as I play the Battle Dome more with different Pokemon and teams, which I do intend on doing in the future, I do intend on updating this document as I guess I gain more knowledge. But I mean, I'll mention this later in the video, but if anybody has anything they would think would be beneficial to add to this, I guess, video or presentation, then definitely let me know. I do also want to note that the Battle Frontier in a sense has already been like solved. You can go online and pick a team of Pokemon that have already been proven to be, I guess, really good for the Frontier, and you could get a gold medal. But I want to, I'm not going to say that it's bad because it's not. I think it just depends on your goal and why you want to play the Battle Frontier. I think it'd be pretty fun if more people decided to craft their own team with using their favorite Pokemon and be a little bit more, I'm not going to say unique, but use Pokemon that I think you really want to use, because at the end of the day, if you don't end up getting a gold medal, you could always just build the team that has already been proven to be quite good and you have a higher success. But if you're able to do it with already Pokemon that you love, I think it'd be very rewarding and I guess more fulfilling. But yeah, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because it just depends on why you're playing the game to begin with. But I'm always reminded by Karen's quote, especially because I just beat her in the Elite Four again in Heart Gold. Strong Pokemon, weak Pokemon. That is only the selfish perception of people. Truly skilled trainers should try to win with their favorites. And the Battle Frontier is the place to put your knowledge, your training, and your team to the absolute test to see if you can challenge the hardest trainers literally in the game and try and be successful. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this video and as you're playing your game and stuff. Anyway, quickly go over some of the Battle Dome basics. It's a tournament style battle, so you go in and you have 4 matches. If you do want to get one of the gold medals, you can only get that using single battles. You could do either level 50 or level 100, which is like the open level. So going into the 4 matches, you pick 3 Pokemon from your party that you bring with you. And in each of those 4 matches, you're only going to bring in 2 of those 3 Pokemon, and you get to pick which one goes first, which one goes second. This is important in strategy and team design. We'll probably get that into a little bit later, but it does get pretty dependent on the Pokemon you train. The very important thing here is you can view your opponent's Pokemon before each battle. However, again, out of the 3 Pokemon they have, they're only going to pick 2 of them. However, this gives you a really good forewarning on what you're going to be encountering in that next match and how to prepare and set up which 2 Pokemon you're going to take with you, which one is going to go first and second. I like this a lot. This is such a cool feature, and it's one reason why I love this more than the Battle Tower, because the Battle Tower has that unexpected nature in a sense, where you don't really know what you're going to be facing. But in the Battle Dome, having that little bit of extra information I think just makes it really fun. To get the silver medal, you need 5 consecutive and successful tournaments, so a total of 19 wins, and then +1 for Tucker the Brain Trust. You have to beat him to get the silver. And then same thing with the gold. You need to win essentially 40 matches in a row to, or I guess 39 matches to face him, and then you got to beat him. So that is how you get that. Jumping into one of the first major sections, this is the threats, so I would call it. If you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. You need to know and understand, regardless of the team you're designing and what Pokemon you want to use, you need to know what's expected as you encounter the Battle Frontier, and this section is going to kind of guide on some of the things I encountered and challenges and teams that I faced and how I overcame those. One thing too is if you never played the Battle Frontier before, there was a phase of at least like 1 or 2 months where I never really looked up anything online. I just wanted to experience it pretty raw and see how far I would do, how good I would do. And I got, kind of far, but at some point when you're playing, it takes like hours to get to certain levels and stages within the Frontier. And when you lose because you're not prepared for something or you're not expecting something, it's kind of defeating. It kind of beats you up after a little while. So that's one reason why I wanted to enjoy it from the Battle Frontier from an innocence perspective, or from like a naive, like I didn't know anything about it or what Pokemon I'd be facing. But as I played it more and I kind of got over that, like, okay, now I understand what I'm doing. Let me actually learn about this so I can be better prepared and prepare my team for what's coming. That's kind of when I started to go a little bit deeper and actually research a lot more things online. But what I'm kind of recommending there is maybe spend like an hour or so if you've never played the Battle Frontier before, and just enjoy it for what it is, and then come back to this prepared to, I guess, take it on in a more like critical sense. But anyway, at the end of the day, you do you. Alright, threats, background. I think that the Pokemon in the Battle Frontier could be categorized in certain ways based on the threat that they pose. We'll get into them in the upcoming slides. It's recommended that when you design your team, you should expect these threats to come up. Like, they will absolutely come up, and your team has to be able to handle these threats or you just lose. I mean, sure, you can probably get lucky here and there, like not having answers to these threats, but you can only get so lucky so quick. And in the Battle Frontier, the bots and the opponents, they are very lucky. They got all the luck in the world. You, on the other hand, you will not be lucky. You must be prepared. We're not going to list every single Pokemon and strategy that poses a threat. I think it'd be too extensive, I think, for a discussion like this. We want to just kind of highlight the major threats here and like the broader, I guess, spectrum of them. However, in the back, in the resources, I added the Excel spreadsheet that lists every single Pokemon you could possibly encounter, their moves and items and all of that information. So, and also, like, the threats are going to be dependent on the team you design. Some teams might have different types of threats and challenges they have to overcome, while others might not even see that as an issue. But again, we're going to list some just big threats that I encountered and found to be difficult. And I've also used multiple different types of teams. So in general, regardless of the team you're going to be facing, these next upcoming slides and Pokemon in these categories are things you want to consider having answers to as you build your team. A common theme is just to have moves that do a lot of damage to these certain Pokemon. That is an answer to a lot of these issues. It's not like the perfect answer. It's not the most maybe satisfying or maybe the answer people want to hear. But at the end of the day, you just got to have certain types of moves to handle these Pokemon. Maybe people would disagree, but that's just my thoughts. Also, I don't know why, Registeel looks so cool right now. I don't know what it is about him. Let's move on to the first threat. Water ground Pokemon. I hate these things. We got things like Wishcash, Quagmire, and Swampert. There might be one other one, but these are the 3 main. These are annoying because in general, they're pretty tanky, just for no reason. And they only have one weakness, which is grass. And grass isn't really a move that you really want to... I just never really had a Pokemon with grass moves. There aren't like that many good ones either unless you run grass type Pokemon. These water ground Pokemon are good because they have both stabs of same type attack bonus for water and ground moves. Surf and Earthquake are very good moves that are also just very common. So they get an extra bonus from these moves. Also, I think just Wishcash might have Fissure, but we'd have to go back and look. Some of these Pokemon have Fissure, which is really annoying. They also, I know Swampert and Quagsire, they do have Curse and Rest builds, which is pretty annoying, again, because they're somewhat tanky. They have one weakness, and one way to deal with these that I was finding was using Toxic. However, you can't Toxic them all if they run the Curse and Rest strategy, unless you stall them out, but that just takes forever. So these are Pokemon that I found to be very annoying, and a lot of the teams that I was building had like Steel and Ground types, so naturally Water and Ground Pokemon are going to be very effective against them because, again, they're typing and their moves, and then my Pokemon's typing and the moves they can have. So this is why this gave me a lot of issues. This might not be issues for a lot of people. If you want to beat these easily, just have a Pokemon with a grass move on your team, and ideally that isn't going to be affected by or very affected by water or ground moves. On the team that I ran for the gold medal, I had a Gengar with Giga Drain, and it annihilated any of these Pokemon. It was very easy. However, a lot of the other teams that I had that I didn't have any grass moves on it, this was a major roadblock anytime one of these came up. One of the other things you can do if you don't have a grass move is just have a Pokemon that is resistant to the water and ground moves. So something like Milotic is also a decent option. If you have a Pokemon that can also heal, like even like a Starmie or something like with Recover, if you can tank an Earthquake or Surf and then have like Recover and then be able to dish out some good damage, I think you're in a pretty good spot here. You just got to be careful again with the typing of Pokemon that you use against these types, and also just make sure that you don't allow them to set up with the Curse and Rest like combo, because that just gets pretty lethal. And just watch out for that Fissure because some of them do have it. Next up, talk about thick normal Pokemon. You absolutely need an answer on your team to this. Some Pokemon include Snorlax, Blissey, Miltank, and Slacking. Some of these Pokemon have builds that use Curse, even Curse and Rest, which is going to really make them tanky. They also have moves like Double Team and Minimize, which make them even more unkillable. Not only are they tanky and beefy, now you can't even hit them. And then on top of that, they're going to use healing moves or items such as Leftovers, Rest, Milk Drink, Soft Boiled, just keeping them in the fight, making them even more harder to kill by using more Double Teams and Minimizes. Basically, if you allow them to set up a little bit, it's going to be a very hard game. One other move that some of these Pokemon have is Counter, so even if you do end up hitting them, they're just going to hit you back even harder. They're really annoying to deal with. So how do you beat these Pokemon? You got to hit them with something lethal. A lot of times, I guess the main way I was defeating these Pokemon was using Meteor Mash on Metagross. A Meteor Mashing Metagross with Choice Band with the Stab on Steel does damage. Typically, it would one-shot these Pokemon. However, maybe it took one or two, but you really got to hit them hard and get them knocked out before they're allowed to do really anything, and it does get tricky. One strategy that I had and other people had was using Explosion. So Explosion's a great move because it's gonna essentially one-shot anything. However, there are some of these Pokemon, the normal types, that run Bright Powder, which raises their evasiveness by like 10%. It's a held item. Maybe it's like 5%, I don't even know, but it raises their evasiveness. And I had an Explosion miss on a Blissey once, and that made me just lose the game. So you as a trainer in the Battle Frontier will get unlucky, and they will get lucky. It's just how it works. You gotta understand that. So I'm very careful with Explosion because it kind of messed me up, but it might be good for other people's strategies. Fighting moves are also great. Brick Break is a TM you can get, and a lot of Pokemon can learn it. I don't think having a dedicated fighting type on a team would be worth it. However, that's going to depend on, again, your team and what you want. But I think a Brick Breaking Pokemon would be pretty good. It does need to hit hard and fast, and again, just make sure these things can't set up. Roar is also a good option to have, so you can roar them away if they are setting up, but also if you already knocked out one of their other Pokemon, and then this comes out and you can't roar them away, well then what's your strategy? At the end of the day, just hit them with something big. So hit them with something hard too. But yeah, you need an answer to these things. Next up, we got powerful water Pokemon. Pokemon that come to mind are Milotic, Kingdra, Suicune, and Lapras. Suicune is something else. We'll talk about it more later on. But these Pokemon are just tanky, and they really only have like 2 weaknesses, which is Electric and Grass. And if you face Kingdra, Kingdra is especially annoying because it's only weak to Dragon. It's really good if you have a Dragon move, but sometimes you don't. Common moves you're going to see on these Pokemon are Surf and Hydro Pump, which they all have the same type attack bonus. They're going to have ice moves too, like Ice Beam and Icy Wind. Icy Wind, if it hits you, it will also slow you down. They also have healing moves and items such as Leftovers. Some even have Shell Bell, I'm pretty sure. And the rest plus Chesterberry combo is quite common, especially on Kingdra. And Milotic does have Recover, so even if you do hit them, they're going to probably heal back. So how do you beat them? Obviously, you're going to want some like electric or grass type moves. But if you don't have that, you're going to need to hit it with something hard. The thing with the grass moves is you can't really have your grass type Pokemon out against these, again, because the risk of them ice beaming you is very high. You can still have grass Pokemon, obviously, but just you got to be cautious with that ice. Kingdra is really annoying, but the way that I got around Kingdra was just hitting it with really hard moves at the end of the day. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, a lot of these answers to these problems are just hit it with something incredibly hard. Moving on, we got things like Quick Claw users. So Quick Claw is an item which sometimes actually allows a Pokemon to attack first regardless of its speed. So this makes a Pokemon that wouldn't normally go first be able to attack first, which can be very surprising if you're not expecting it. So you need to be aware of some Pokemon that do have the Quick Claw held item and what moves they have, because if you're not expecting it, this could really impact, I guess, the course of that match. Some Pokemon that come to mind are just lethal Pokemon. We got Tyranitar, Metagross, Regirock, and Snorlax. 2 things, there are probably other moves too, but 2 big things that come to mind regarding Quick Claw are Quick Claw plus Focus Punch. Regirock and Breloom have this. So why this is scary is because if they use Focus Punch on the end of their turn and the Quick Claw activates at the beginning of the next turn, that Focus Punch will hit before you even have a chance to respond, and Focus Punch does a lot of damage. So this Quick Claw plus Focus Punch Wombo combo is something you can't even really play around. Quick Claw plus a one-hit KO move, so we got Rhydon, Nidoking, Whiscash, got things like Horn Drill, Fissure. Sometimes if you're playing the game, this hasn't really happened to me, but they just go first, hit you with the one-hit KO move, and then you're done, and there's like nothing you can do. So how do you beat these? I hate to say luck, but sometimes you just get lucky, or sometimes you get unlucky, like getting the Quick Claw one-hit KO by a Rhydon using Horn Drill. Like, what are you supposed to do there? I remember someone in the comments did mention that happened to them on a very long or high run, so it just happens sometimes. One thing you can do, though, is if you're predicting that they might have this, you can switch into a Ghost or Flying Pokemon, or just some, I guess mostly Ghost and Flying, because Ghost is probably the best, especially Gengar, because Horn Drill and Fissure, and there might be one other one, can't hit it. And Explosion can't hit Gengar, because Gengar's Ghost, and has Levitate. So Gengar is a great overall just strategic Pokemon to have against, I guess, this strategy. But Flying could also be pretty good against Fisher. But again, you could use other Ghost Pokemon as well. But if you don't have any of these options, you just got to hit these Pokemon hard and hopefully you knock them out quickly. I would definitely stay to not try and stall the game, so don't try and toxic them out or, burn them to death or something, because it doesn't matter. They're going to get lucky, and the only way we play our luck is by deleting those Pokemon ASAP. So, yeah, pretty scary. Got to be prepared for these things. They come up. Next up, we got some counter Mirror Coat Pokemon. Some Pokemon that have these moves. Counter, Wobbuffet's got it. Registeel, Swampert, Miltank, Snorlax, Mirror Coat, Wobbuffet. Yeah, you can obviously read. What Counter does is if you hit the Pokemon with a physical attacking move, it'll hit you back even harder. Mirror Coat is if you use a special attacking move and they use that move, hit you back even harder. You need to be careful which moves you use and if these Pokemon have these types of moves. Because if you hit that Pokemon hard and they don't die and they hit you with Counter Mirror Coat, they will probably one-shot your Pokemon. There's been a lot of times where I had several runs using a Dragon Dancing Tyranitar where I would get that thing pretty beefed up and I would use like Rock Slide or something on like a Skarmory and it would live with like a little sliver of health, and then it would use Counter and it just annihilates you. Same thing, I mean, not just Skarmory, but even like Swampert or something. If you can't defeat those Pokemon quickly, or in one move, I guess is a better way to put it. If you can hit them and they can hit you back with the Counter Mirror Coat, there's a high chance you're going to just die. You have to like play around these things and be aware of them because they just come out of nowhere and it's really annoying. So how do you beat these things? You got to be confident you can one-shot those Pokemon. And it's tough. Like Wobbuffet, if Wobbuffet comes up, the best way of dealing with that is kind of just using Toxic or something, or if you have a Pokemon that can set up, you keep setting up until you know for 100% you can one-shot that thing. However, Pokemon like Swampert and Milotic are different because depending on the builds and movesets they have, it can be, you might not be able to do that because they have different moves that can hurt you. If the Pokemon doesn't have Rest though, Toxic is a great move to use because a lot of their builds rely on trying to use the Counter or Mirror Coat. Maybe not a lot of their builds, but some. If you know a Pokemon has Counter and not Mirror Coat, then if you only use special attacking moves, you know that Counter is not going to affect you. Vice versa with Mirror Coat. If you know the Pokemon has Mirror Coat, just use physical attacking moves, and that's a way to play around it. This is one of those things though where if you look in the guide or you look on the Excel sheet, you could get a gauge on the Pokemon you're versing if they may or may not have one of these moves, and just kind of playing around it, being cautious of it. Next up is, I call them grass healers. Things like this derpy sombrero dude. I hate Ludicolo. Ludicolo has been my arch nemesis the last few weeks because I've seen so many of them in the Battle Factory, just wreaking havoc through my save file. Grass healers include Pokemon like Cradily, Ludicolo, Meganium, and Venusaur. Just don't allow these Pokemon to set up because it's so annoying. They will hold items like Leftovers or Shell Bell. They're going to use moves like Leech Seed and Giga Drain, and then they'll Toxic you and Double Team. Essentially, their strategy is, I'm going to Leech Seed you, I'm going to use spam Double Team, I'm going to heal with Leftovers, and that's it. That is how I win the game. These Pokemon aren't necessarily that difficult to defeat, but you need a way to like hurt them. And flying moves are great. I don't think flying is good against Cradily, but it's good against all the other ones. And Aerial Ace is the absolute perfect move because even if they use Double Team, you're still going to hit them because Aerial Ace never misses. Other super effective moves like any Fire Ice also do pretty well. But having a move like Aerial Ace I think is very important. These Pokemon are very annoying to deal with, and yeah, if they're getting their Leftovers, Giga Drain, and Leech Seed all in one turn, they just heal. You have to be able to do some pretty good amount of damage or hit them with some sort of super effective move. There's not much else I think to talk about with these Pokemon. It's just they heal a lot and they're grass, most of them. Next up we got legendary Pokemon. This is the category that I have least experience with, as I haven't really been in the higher rounds that much, and the one run that I did actually get very high or get the gold medal, I didn't actually encounter any legendaries, which is probably a reason why I got the gold medal, because I got that lucky. All of these Pokemon have incredibly high base stats, which is why they're pretty lethal. Essentially, the only way you're defeating these is just to have very super effective moves and try to have Pokemon that are resistant against their moves, which is kind of impossible because their move pools are so diverse. Latios and Latias, they are very fast. They either have they have both high special attack and special defense. I think Latios, the blue one, has higher special defense, and Latias has higher special attack. Regardless, they're high. They're in the hundreds. They all have very versatile moves. You got things like Dragon Claw and Psychic, which are both stab. They have Ice Beam, Recover, Earthquake. Their move pool is all over the place, and there's so many different sets, it's very hard to predict which is which. They're weak to Dragon, Ice, Ghost, Dark, and Bug, so try to have some of these moves on your Pokemon, because that's gonna be a way to try and defeat them. Suicune, Raikou, and Entei, the three doggos, they all have the ability Pressure. They run some pretty good moves like Calm Mind, Rest, and Chesto Berry. If they do Calm Mind once or twice and then they end up resting and getting back to full health, that's a very tough match. That's hard to come back by. I have a 0% win rate any of those dogs using those moves. I think Suicune is the most threatening out of them all because Raikou and Entei could get hurt with Earthquake Earthquake, which is a pretty common move on a lot of Pokemon. But Suicune is really only weak to Grass and Electric. And again, because of Ice Beam, you're never really... It's tough. It's a tough Pokemon to defeat. And you can't really hit it with Toxic because a lot of the builds have the Rest. So just hitting it with something hard is the best strategy that I've found. Regirock, Registeel, and Regice are awesome Pokemon. I haven't actually had the pleasure of encountering any of those yet in the Battle Dome, but they have a lot of versatile moves as well, and powerful ones too. Earthquake, Rock Slide, Double Team, Blizzard. Again, there's 3 Pokemon there. There's a lot of different sets. There's a lot of different moves they're going to have, so you got to just be careful. And definitely watch out for, I think a couple of them have the Quick Claw, Focus Punch, and Explosion Wombo combo. Just got to be careful. Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres are probably, out of all legendaries, the easier ones because they are flying, so you can just hit it with like Rock Slide or something. They do have the ability Pressure as well, so just gotta watch out with the moves you're using, and yeah, just be cautious with Pressure. Yeah, but in general, you just gotta hit these things with the most powerful moves you got, and hopefully you don't die. Additional Pokemon that we haven't really mentioned elsewhere, but we needed to note somewhere. Pokemon like Metagross, Tyranitar, Dragonite, Salamence, they're basically pseudo-legendaries. They're all lethal. They have a lot of sets, and they do a lot of damage. The great thing about versing Metagross and Tyranitar is Earthquake's a pretty common move, so they're both weak to that. Same thing, Dragonite, Salamence. If you got an Ice move, they're 4 times weak to that, so you at least have a good way of being able to one-shot those Pokemon. Some honorable mentions, got things like Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl is so fast, and it hits so hard. And the Stab, Rock Slide, or Ancient Power does a lot of damage. Also, one of the abilities that Aerodactyl can have is Rock Head. So if he uses that with Double Edge, it does a lot of damage. But yeah, Aerodactyl is so fast. Marowak is surprisingly one of the Pokemon that gives me goosebumps whenever I see it. A Marowak usually has, I think actually all of them have Thick Club, which is like the exclusive item for Marowak, which buffs its attack. That combined it with Earthquake, which is the stab, the same type of attack bonus, that it does so much damage to your Pokemon. It's insane. Marowak is lethal with that Earthquake. Blastoise is another Pokemon that's kind of surprising. Ice Beam with Earthquake combo is scary. You gotta be careful with your Electric and Grass type Pokemon because Blastoise has essentially moves to defeat your Pokemon. Starmie has Stab, Psychic, and Surf with very high special attack and speed. It also runs Recover, so if it does get hit, you can stay in the fight. But yeah, Starmie, just overall really good Pokemon. Gengar, again, has very high special attack and speed, very few weaknesses, and also runs Destiny Bond, so it can just take you out quite quickly and with essentially no reason. Gardevoir as well, high special attack, Calm Mind, Destiny Bond, you just gotta watch out. It can allow it to set up, and if it does set up and Destiny Bonds you, well, it's over. Gonna go into the next section about team building. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. So some design considerations for your team. Just remember that you always be picking 2 of the 3 Pokemon, and you can pick which Pokemon goes first and second. This does help with your strategy. So like one thing I had on my team was I had one Pokemon that was focused on all attacking, all special attacking, and the 2 other Pokemon were somewhat beefy. When it made sense to, I would try to start with the Pokemon that was the squishiest, which gives me the ability to swap into a bulkier Pokemon if needed, because I know that Pokemon had a higher chance of taking the hit. You can use things like this to your advantage when deciding like what Pokemon to have on your team and how they're going to synergize, I guess, together when you actually come into the match. Definitely helps, kind of going off the first bullet, to have your Pokemon should cover each other's weaknesses. So in a sense, when you're swapping to other Pokemon on your team, you should be swapping to a Pokemon you know that can almost be resistant to a move that you're expecting. One example is, if I have Metagross out and I'm expecting like an Earthquake, well, if I switch into Gengar has Levitate, it's not going to be affected. So that's one of those things where if I know a move might be coming, if I switch into a Pokemon that I know is going to be able to either tank the hit or avoid it, then that gives me a huge advantage. It also helps to use Pokemon with very few weaknesses, so like Metagross, Gengar, Kingdra, Swampert. By doing this, you're already eliminating a lot of the moves that could potentially really hurt you and your team, and this just allows you to be able to absorb more damage, gain more information about the game itself or the match that's taking place. As you're building your team, you're going to need as diverse of a move pool as possible to be super effective against a lot of different opponents. You obviously can't cover every single thing in typing, but you gotta pick your poison and say, hey, I don't think this team could really handle this or whatever. It's going to be dependent on the Pokemon you choose, but try and be as diverse in your moves as possible, of different typing. Also, when you're IV training and EV training, if you do choose to do those, there's always going to be a trade-off between attack and speed and defensive stats. You can only pick so many. But this all comes together when deciding, again, what Pokemon you're using and which is going to go first or second, what moves they're going to have, and what the Pokemon's role is on the team and how they're going to deal with some of these threats that we identified earlier. And again, move pool considerations, physical attacking versus special attacking. Do you want to mostly focus on like the stab moves so you can deal additional damage, or are you going to use some more maybe TMs and get the flexibility of other moves, but you're going to lose maybe some extra damage you might have? A key point though is you need ways to defeat certain Pokemon quickly, or the bot's luck increases. Again, we're talking about these one-hit KO moves, Sheercoal, Fissure. The longer the match goes on, the more likely if they keep spamming that, they're going to hit that. The longer the match goes on, the more likely they're going to hit a crit. It's inevitable that they always hit them. And many Pokemon try to set up, and this compounds throughout the course of the game. But if they get a curse off, well, now they're even harder to kill. They get another curse off, well, it just gets more and more complicated. And this works with almost all the moves that raise their stats, like Curse, Double Team, Calm Mind, got Bulk Up too. It just escalates, and you really gotta. The best way. It sounds easier to put on paper, but the best way to handle the situations is just to get rid of the problem before it even starts. Again, easier on paper, easier said than done, but something you got to consider when designing a team and how you're gonna get rid of those problems quickly. Things I want to be cautious of. I don't want to discourage anybody from not playing with their favorite Pokemon, or not using or doing things they want to do and how they want to play the game. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. You got to play the game and have fun. But you got to be mindful of your team's weaknesses and also its strengths. So just be cautious of, or I guess cautious maybe isn't the best word. Be mindful. I think I'll probably update the title. Things to be mindful of. Try and avoid a 4x weakness Pokemon like Salamence, Tyranitar, because when that cross chop hits Tyranitar, you're done. It doesn't even matter. You just lose. It just kills. Like it hurts. Salamence is one of the reasons why I stopped using Salamence in the Battle Frontier, was because it gets hit with an Icy Wind or Ice Beam and it just dies. It's a tough day. When you have Pokemon that have very few weaknesses, especially no 4x weaknesses, it becomes much more sustainable or easy to stay in the fight, and not be so scared of getting hit with a certain move. So just keep that in mind as you're designing the team. And I do recognize that there's a lot of Pokemon I love that have 4x weakness. Tyranitar, Flygon with Ice, Salamence. There's a lot of them. And I do want to use these Pokemon, but maybe limit to like one Pokemon per team, because again, the 4x will just annihilate that Pokemon if it does connect. Try to avoid the same typing Pokemon. I'm pretty guilty of this because I use a lot of Steel and Ground types. I just like them, it's fun. So be mindful of, if you are using it, how are you covering its weaknesses, and how are you spreading out the strengths of those Pokemon so you can cover more things. Again, be mindful. One thing to be considerate of too is, if you have a Pokemon that has super effective moves against another Pokemon, however, you have to understand that the opponent's Pokemon might have moves that are super effective against your Pokemon. So it's like you in a sense, you're trying to predict the Pokemon you should have and the moves that you should have for certain types of Pokemon. But if you're not being cognizant of the moves that Pokemon already has, you might just be setting yourself up for failure. In a way, you might think you might be solving certain problems, when in reality, you're not. You're just setting yourself up for failure, because the Pokemon you think is going to answer that threat is actually not going to be able to. An example would be a water Pokemon with Ice Beam to use against Latios. However, Latios has Thunderbolt, or some builds have Thunderbolt. So again, using Ice Beam on a water Pokemon might be good, but you have to be aware that, hey, Thunderbolt's coming. So if your water Pokemon, let's say, is Gyarados and you got Blizzard, well, I can almost guarantee you that Blizzard isn't connecting on that Latios because of things like accuracy and the speed of Latios. So you just got to keep things like that in mind. Make sure if you're creating a solution for a problem or one of these threats, it's actually going to be able to respond to that. I want to leave you with some just final thoughts. I think, we get in the weeds and things, and people get in the weeds also, not just me. I think I gotta step back, enjoy the process. We're playing a game here. We're having fun. It doesn't have to be, if it takes you 8 years to get a gold medal, does it really matter? Did you have fun and enjoy the process? I think that's just something to keep in mind. I mean, if maybe people want to like speed run and get the gold medal as quick as possible, but if you're going to do that, then you're probably not going to take this sort of route in the video. You're going to look for what is the most optimal team, and you're going to perfect that and understand that strategy. If you do choose to design your own team and play with your favorite Pokemon and all that stuff, it's going to take time to learn the team, learn the strengths, weaknesses, what Pokemon you can use against others, and there's going to be unique challenges that you're going to be facing with your team and within the Battle Frontier. You got to give the team a chance. You got to spend time with it to really understand its potential. You got to spend time with the team, but you also have to understand that after a little while, you have to start adapting and experimenting with different things, like different items and maybe moves. On a very realistic note, not every Pokemon and team is meant for the Battle Frontier. The Battle Frontier is not like a child's game. There's serious RNG issues against you. The AIs just have all this luck and crazy teams and moves. Some Pokemon just aren't meant for the Battle Frontier, and that's not to discourage anybody from not trying. The whole point of this whole video is to use Pokemon that you want to try. We're identifying all the problems that as you're building your team, you're understanding and crafting your own team to try and handle these. I think that anybody should try and use any Pokemon they want, but if we're just being realistic for a minute, there are just some Pokemon and teams that just might not work. And you shouldn't beat yourself up about it. You should just understand that, hey, it might not work. But if you want to go metal, one thing you could just do is just copy a team and learn the strategy, and then you can get one. But I think there's definitely something rewarding and fulfilling by trying to win with certain Pokemon or teams that maybe are more unique or not as mainstream, and kind of making an already very difficult challenge even more challenging, but because of the fact you're trying to win with your favorites would make it even more rewarding and in the process more enjoyable. I think that's something that, like, why wouldn't more people want to try that in a game? You know, I don't know. It's just my take on it. There are definitely Pokemon and teams that'll be a lot more difficult, but that's like, why not? Why not try it? You know, if those are the Pokemon you love and that's how you want to play the game, I think that, like, now's the time to do it. You know, like, now's the time. But yeah, I had to add this meme down here. It's hilarious. Not hilarious, but it's accurate. It's an accurate representation of when I hear that part of the song. That's exactly what I feel like I look like. Last slide, we got some references. We got obviously the YouTube channel. We got the second link. I'll add all these in the description. This has a Reddit post with incredibly useful resources in the Battle Frontier. Also, one of the links in this Reddit post is this Excel spreadsheet with all of the Battle Frontier Pokemon. Yeah, it's an incredibly good resource. Very thankful for all the people who, I guess, put those together. So definitely credit to those people. I did not make those. Let's make that clear. Definitely check those out for more information. Also, if anybody wants to add anything to this presentation or slides, just send me an email or leave a comment below and probably update it in like another revision. Anyway, though, I think that's all we got for now. There's definitely plenty more we got to learn, or I guess I got to learn about the Battle Frontier and even the Battle Dome. But I wanted to take this at least as a snapshot and point in time, so when I go back and maybe in like couple months or a year from now, when I do pick the Battle Dome back up, I at least have a good basis on what's going on, what the challenges are, and how I overcame them or am overcoming them, because I do want to start experimenting and going out and testing other teams in different sections of the Battle Frontier. Anyway, though, thank you all for watching and joining. Stay tuned for some more Pokemon videos. We got a lot. Definitely check them out on the channel. Take care, everybody. I will see you later. Hopefully enjoying your Pokemon games, because you know I am. See ya.